Hi, good morning. Welcome, everybody. I think we'll start by doing a quick round of introductions. So I'm being kindly asked to moderate this morning. My name's Andy Gray. I work for a small smart contracts engineering company in Manchester. And I'll start by introducing Tamlin and ask you to speak about your product and who you are.
Thanks, guys. Hi, everyone. I'm Tamlyn Rudolph. My background, very broadly, is energy derivatives trading. I traded that for about 15 years. And then a couple of years ago, been getting interested in a bit of the fintech and blockchain space. And Barney Mannerings, who couldn't make it along today, approached me with this pretty crazy idea about taking, if you have Bitcoin and so forth, that is like a decentralized money. If you have Ethereum, which is decentralized compute, what if we were to build a capital markets layer that was fully decentralized? And that's what Vega is. We're building basically a side chain to the major collateral blockchains for a basically fast and safe trading. So we're designing our solution from the blockchain layer all the way up. And actually, just very excitingly, we launched our testnet today on the stage at 10 to 5, and we're very excited about that.
That's just, yeah, right. Brilliant.
Congrats on that, by the way. So my name is Gustav Arentoft. I'm doing the business development for Maker, responsible for Europe. At Maker, we have developed a decentralized stablecoin where we use on-chain collateral to back up the value of the stablecoin we issue. We're currently the market leaders within DeFi. And we basically provide the base layer of infrastructure to basically other projects and people to build products and services on top of us. So our partners is all around us within the DeFi space.
My name is Stani Kulechov. I'm the founder and CEO of Aave. Aave is basically a money market on Ethereum. We launched 1.5 months ago, and basically currently we have the market size of 35 million worth and roughly 26 million total locked value, which is kind of the yardstick in DeFi to calculate the amount that actually the users trust your protocol. I started in the space a few years ago with a product called ETHLend, which was first lending protocol on Ethereum. That was the time before, for example, DeFi was called DeFi, and before the stablecoin era and this kind of like liquidity pool models. And currently we're focusing on making our protocol more safer and secure, and helping developers to build different kinds of things. The main thing about Aave and our protocol is that you can do flash loans, you can lend and borrow, and stablecoins such as, for example, DAI, and a bunch of other ones. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I'm going to start off with quite an obvious question. Decentralization is a term that everyone's going to be using around today, but is it worth just saying what decentralization means to you guys and where we're at in terms of, true decentralization? Stani, should we mix it up and
maybe
start?
You guys want to start? Or Oh, I can start. Yeah, sure. Okay, so basically, I think decentralization, it's a spectrum. So I don't think there's like a binary way to kind of like define like what is decentralized, what is not. So it's not like a switch that you can just press on and off. I think there is a different level of decentralization, and it really depends on like how much decentralization you want to apply into your protocol. Because decentralization and blockchain technology it's a cost and very big cost at the moment. I think the main keys for what we are doing is definitely the aspect of non-custodial way of interacting with other users or with the protocol, and that basically means that you control your own funds and you actually know what you're doing. In terms of how the protocol will react, and that's basically the deployed public smart contract code. The problem, of course, is that it's very difficult to understand what the code is if you're not a developer. So there's like always you're like relying on some kind of trust. Either it's the smart contract auditors or basically other people within the community. That's basically one of the main things in the decentralization. Of course, trustless ecosystems and the ability that you can actually interact with these protocols with permissionless way. That's pretty important for us, and the transparency. So I think now that the whole DeFi space is living in a momentum where we want everything to be transparent. So we see that there isn't any anomalies. We see how much people are paying for interest rates. And I think at some point, privacy will be something that we are more concerned about. But those are kind of like, from our perspective, the main things.
Yeah, I think especially, for example, if you talk about governance, like decentralization often also means inefficiency, right? Because of course, if you need 1,000 people to take a decision together, rather than needing 10 people to take a decision together, the 1,000 people will most likely be much longer to take that decision, right? So like as long as you kind of like need to reach these consensus in the protocols, then decentralization can often mean inefficiency. So I don't believe that, for example, in governance that it should be applied everywhere. But for example, at Maker, we're really building what we believe will kind of like be this like open infrastructure that we want people to globally have trust and accessibility to. So there we believe decentralization is of the utmost importance. On the product side, decentralization for us often just means like equal access, equal opportunity, that anyone anywhere in the world can access this and get like the same rates, the same parameters from the products themselves. However, I also personally truly believe in like, for example, centralized access to these protocols, right? So if you have a trusted actor, a non-centralized actor who goes in and kind of like uses the trust that people have in their platform and their front end, for example, as like an access gateway into DeFi, I think that's something which is actually very encouraged, right? And this is also kind of like the way that we are seeing the space move a little bit towards. There's a lot of opportunities for people to build these interaction tools and basically be able to leverage all the all the hard work and all the products that, for example, the protocols are building between, for example, Aave and Maker in this case. So I believe it really depends on like where you are in the ecosystem, like where you are in the layers, like how much decentralization you actually want to have introduced. So a good example is, for example, at Maker we have like very few products we release ourselves to the public in that sense. So we have Oasis.app, which is where we have our trade, borrow, and save functions, which is like the core functions of the system. We don't believe that Oasis.app will be like a front end that will have like millions of users, because it's really like the most basic level of interaction, right? But however, someone who's building, access to our services in like a platform that has millions of users, but you use it as like a byproduct, that's something which, might have, a lot bigger potential to actually acquire retail.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Cool. So the way I think about decentralization, I think, again, coming from the traditional markets and trading, is what is it that decentralization fundamentally does? And the way I look at it is three things. It allows potentially global access, and I think the flip side of that is my number two, which is essentially censorship resistance. I think those things are very, very exciting when you start to think about, at the moment, in the way capital markets run, traditionally, they have very big walled gardens. In fact, I've traded on my own account, and it took me months to register and prove a degree of, sort of capital behind me to be able to even trade what I think is, energy derivatives, which I felt to some extent was a basic human right, that people should be able to hedge their energy, industry should be able to access these products. So censorship resistance and global access, I think, are very, very exciting. And then the third thing I'd say is permissionless innovation. And permissionless innovation in our context is being able for anyone to be able to create a market on anything they want to, anywhere in the world, and be able to then globally access a liquidity pool to help support that. So those are the three sort of characteristics, I'd say, of decentralization that I think make this really exciting. I agree with these guys that decentralization, to achieve that, is often a spectrum. Like, you have to design a protocol that maybe actually requires some kind of centralized oracle or some kind of something in the layer of the stack that helps the mechanics of these types of protocols work in DeFi. But I guess my thesis, or what I'm excited about, is maybe in 20 years or 50 years' time, the way markets will run, the way finance will run, will be on these decentralized rails. And I don't know where, if this is fully decentralized and this is the current lay of the land, where we end up and how we get there. But I think the how is through repeated experimentation and creating kind of lots of little protocols and working this stuff out all together. And that's where
Okay. So everyone here obviously is very interested in DeFi. We know there's obviously these well-publicized interest rates and amazing products and amazing things you can do with these so-called Lego blocks. Why don't you think people are flocking to this in huge amounts of volume right now? Are they coming and we just, is it a tidal wave that's about to happen? Or is there some, in your opinion, blockers that's really blocking that pipe of, well, adoption, as it's often called?
I mean, just to get like a quick comment on this one, right? I mean, people, they often talk about like scalability or like why are we not bigger than we are? But if you actually look on like where we came from just 2017, like 2017 in December when like Maker launched, right? And like until today, and just like the growth we had last year, if you compare that to other fintech industry, like parts of the fintech industry, for example, peer-to-peer lending, I mean, our growth rates are way higher, right? And like the amount of capital we have captured already now is quite significant in my opinion. I would also say that so for example, so Aave, they launched their newest version of the protocol 1.5 months ago. Maker, we launched ours around 3 months ago. So this is still like the current protocols that we are sitting on right now are still relatively new, right? I mean, we of course have like the utmost confidence in it, and it's, like, we spend like so much time and money, energy, and resources on auditing these protocols, verifying that what we want them to do is what they can do, but it's still like a long process, right?
Yeah.
So as time goes by, you can like inherently have more and more confidence in it, because it's just like how do things work. The same thing also with like the gradual decentralization, right? There's a reason why you don't start out with being totally decentralized from day one. It's because if you're totally decentralized, you need to have thought out and have the ability to defend against every single possible attack vector, right? Because if someone attacks a system and it's decentralized and you don't have a way to counter that attack, like for example what happened with BCX, right? I mean, well, then you have a really bad situation. So I mean, for me, I think we're still quite young.
On track.
You guys are going on testnet today, right? So why are you not scaled more? Well, because they're just going on testnet today.
Yeah.
So I believe that we have a very long way to go. We might have achieved some like, we might have some good achievements now, but like compared to where we want to go, it will take a long time. It will take a lot more products, a lot more integration, a lot more building out. But I think we're on a really good path.
And you think the foundations are there now to build upon?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think about the scalability, it's very interesting, like what's happening in the whole DeFi space, because like it's a open network. So basically, anyone from the crowd here, or for example, me or Gustaf or anyone can actually build anything on top of Ethereum, financial applications, and you can interact with other protocols and
for better and for worse, right?
For better and for worse, and I mean, you can have the negative and positive effect. And what is interesting part here is that this is very key concept of scalability and the whole DeFi ecosystem. And Gustaf mentioned about this. If you compare it to fintech, for example, I mean, it's very hard to scale and to find this similar type of composability with all the regulation is there, and also all the legacy that basically all the banking systems and financial institutions have, and they have to drag upon with themselves. So it's very difficult to reach the same level, and that's why there's like very good foundation for the scalability. And I would say about the actually how decentralized you have to be on the day one. I think this is like a very good point, like why, for example, Vega is today, for example, in testnet, and it takes a lot of time to go to the mainnet is because the procedure to basically make your code available to the public and actually letting everyone use your financial product in DeFi is that you're not handling other people's money, but there's kind of like a diligence that needs to be put into all these protocols. And it's like, it's getting the threshold on how much things you need to do before you go into mainnet is growing all the time. Aave, for example, these days, we have a $500,000 budget on security audits annually, and it's going to grow exponentially for the next years. And that's just one part. And all the standards are growing. And interesting part is that there isn't like a single body that decides what you should put into this kind of like a diligence. So it's pretty much on the community. For example, Maker, Vega, and Aave, and all the other DeFi protocols together, basically, they're all the time trying to put things forward. So basically what we should do next to make better standards and better protocols. And that's why building slow is very important, and especially if you're doing infrastructure level where the usage will be very kind of like a widespread. And of course, you can build something very quick and for example, less decentralized if it's layer 5 in the whole ecosystem and actually doesn't need the same decentralization. But when you're building infrastructure, you really need to have as much as decentralization as possible. But the problem, of course, is that if you need to change to fix bugs, it's very difficult if you're as decentralized as you can be. But end of the day, the way to move forwards is governance, because it brings flexibility. And if you have a good community, good governance, you can do fairly quickly even like big changes into the protocol because your community trusts basically what you're doing.
Indeed.
Yeah, I would probably challenge the notion that, there isn't. I would say that the $1 billion that's tied up in DeFi is actually a huge signal that that DeFi is something that is desired. That I think it's a great signal to the developers and creators of DeFi projects that there are people who are willing to put that level of trust in early stage development. I think obviously there's a long way to go for the entire ecosystem and also in DeFi itself. I was going to say, I think.
You think people are a little bit crazy in Ethereum space to put that amount of money into the protocol?
I mean, I wouldn't put $1 billion fully of my own money in there, but I think it's a signal that, I think people have Ethereum, they want to do something with it, they want to evolve this capital market system, they want to earn rates of return on it, and I'm really impressed with sort of the projects that are developing out these kind of new products, basically. And some of these, the way I look at them, again, coming from the sort of traditional world, is that they're like structured products. Some of them have nuances in that they're just different to what you've maybe seen before, and the fact that people are willing to back that. And the other point I'd make in terms of maturing the industry is that even in the traditional markets, it takes years and years of people repeatedly trading something and using a venue for it to gain trust, to evolve. And so I'm not personally that fussed about that. I think the growth has been great up to this point. I think it is really young. I think your point absolutely about, actually it beats fintech. It's actually also a lot harder than a lot of fintech. It's not building an app to connect into some existing rails. It's building entire new infrastructure.
However, I would say that when you say it's harder, it's in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Because, for example, to this day, you can actually relatively easy build, for example, a digital wallet that would have similar services like Revolut. You could have a wallet that would allow you to invest via Uniswap. It could, gain interest rates via Compound, Aave, or Maker. You could get loans even, which is even a feature that Revolut, for example, don't have. You can send money to your friends.
True.
You can do payments. And all of this you would be able to do by leveraging all of these protocols laying behind it, right? So I think this is some of the things that I believe will really move us forward, is that all of the infrastructure that we are building is so easily accessible, so anyone can pick it up and very easily build front-end interactions with it. And all of a sudden, what before cost, I believe I heard that it cost between $80 and $100 million to build a challenger bank. Well, all of a sudden you can build it with a few devs in a month, right?
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that is a little bit crazy, but also some of the things that we see currently, which I think is very, very beautiful about the Ethereum DeFi space specifically.
Yeah, indeed. I totally agree. As an engineer myself, we're starting to plug in anytime in any of our smart contracts we're holding DAI, why not just earn interest on it? So there's just a couple of lines of code to open up a bit of magic is really happening. So, Stani, you mentioned earlier there's been a few exploits, or some people call them hacks, maybe the exploits. I think these are going to happen more in the space. And I remember at a talk in East London, you mentioned that it's inevitable because writing software is it's not a solved problem. So how do you see hacks, exploits, the evolution of smart contracts? And do you think there's going to be a problem with trust? Or do you think that's going to make the DeFi space stronger overall?
Definitely, I think the hacks are an interesting thing because, if you look at the flash loans were pretty much we can call them exploits, hacks, attacks, but the first definitely was a hack. But the interesting part here is that hacks are nothing new in the Ethereum space, the coolest thing that what Ethereum or smart contract-based system allow us to do is to build anything on any kind of piece of code. Now, the problem here comes like, how do you basically build code or systems that are actually resilient to different kinds of hacks? And most of the work now is done by manual audits. We can have formal verification to make the system better, but also like to formal verify everything. It's actually more of an art than a kind of like a profession, because it's very difficult field with having all the properties there. But the thing is, like, actually we have bigger responsibility when we build the system than actually traditional finance, because like we're building systems where the code is completely public. So we as developers, we have limited time to actually build systems, auditors limited time to actually audit the systems, and eventually hackers and exploiters, they have unlimited time to actually research your code and perform different kinds of attacks. And that's the big kind of equation that is very hard to beat. And what is interesting here is that the recent hacks, they definitely made systems in essence, what Flash Loan allowed you to do is that you have now developers who have basically whale-like liquidity. So we used to say, like, we used to have nerds who are trying to hack the systems. Now we have like nerds with money, like whale-like money, hacking the systems.
I guess.
And the interesting part here is that it was a kind of like attack, but eventually it make everyone a bit more cautious of what's happening here, trying to make their system more resilient to flash loans. So I'm pretty sure everyone here in the room, including Aave, Maker, Vega, and whoever else is building decentralized protocols, basically are talking inside their house about flash loans, and also security auditors are talking about flash loans and thinking how we can protect ourselves with this kind of attacks.
Yeah.
And this is just one part, and there will be similar kind of scenarios where we have new hacks, new exploits, and we just need to quickly think like how we can protect our systems and build better protocols. And I think in the long term, it definitely will help us all kinds of attacks to build more resilient systems.
And from Maker's perspective, obviously they're holding a lot of people's money, so it's a big responsibility. Can you sleep at night?
I mean, the way that you should basically see like the collateral, like the value in the DeFi protocols, right, is like a target on your back. So, for example, at Maker, I haven't checked the crypto prices this morning, but let's say around $500 million in collateral, right? That's basically if you break the contracts and you can complete a successful of like a critical level attack. I mean, you could basically scoop up all the collateral, right? Which would be like completely catastrophic for the ecosystem, right? So I think I would say we were lucky that it happened to BCX. I think BCX were using a ridiculously bad Oracle system by relying on Uniswap's liquidity pools as the Oracle, because it's probably one of the only Oracles you can manipulate within a single block.
Yeah.
So it kind of like revealed a very obvious liquidity in their a very obvious flaw in their system, right? So I don't believe that we would have had something like that happen to Maker. But at Maker, we have seen a lot of conversation about like governance attacks, for example. Like what happens if someone scoops something up Maker to basically go in and like attack the system. So there was this like pretty famous article that was written like back in late December, like how you could steal $300 million of collateral with $25 million of Maker.
Yeah.
That was written, which at that point, the big thing for us was that we were, of course, 100% aware of this vulnerability. So basically, back then, when we launched multi-collateral DAI, it was a new protocol. So we chose to have a 0 seconds delay on upgrading the smart contracts in the system, which basically meant that we at that point were still able to go in and, for example, correct a bug if we found something. So if we, for example, had a bug, we could correct it immediately, and it could be like excluded from the system. However, if you have a delay in the implementation of the smart contract, and we would go in and we would, correct the bug, basically the entire blockchain would be able to see that now this smart contract is getting upgraded in 24 hours, for example. So that meant you had 24 hours to find and exploit the bug that was within that smart contract.
Yeah.
However, then it opened up for a governance attack, because if you would then have the majority of it, get enough tokens to perform like a vote, basically, you could instantly upgrade the contracts, right? So it's like always these like trade-offs, and this is, for example, the panel's name is like how decentralized is DeFi. Well, at the moment, there's still some of the elements in the protocols that is like centralized in that sense, I also believe Maker is probably one of the only protocols that doesn't have admin keys right now. And we recently implemented the government security module, which is basically the delay on the implementation, because now we are more confident in the security itself of the contracts. But it is, like a gradual process, and it will take time. And like you cannot expect someone to be protected against all fronts from day one. And this is how decentralization works in these systems, right? Is that it is like a gradual process. If you go full and decentralized from day one, well, you also have a lot more attack vectors that you might not be that vetted or that well positioned to protect against.
Okay, we've got 1 minute left, so I'll let you wrap up on this last topic.
No worries. I think a really interesting emerging field in this industry is crypto economics. And we just came back from MIT and Stanford conferences that focus purely on this, and a lot on like essentially risk analysis of these, of the mechanism design of any kind of DeFi type project. And what's really interesting, I think, Stani was saying is like, the development of standards and the looking at risk and being able to look at one project or one code base and saying, okay, this is more decentralized or better or safer or whatever criteria you want to use is still quite difficult. And I think it's still quite an emergent field. And I think as we shore those things up, and it's actually something we look at Vega is joining with you guys and trying to develop some sort of standards to make it easier for people to more, better analyze and risk assess across different projects.
Actually, I think Consensus is coming out with their own open framework for how these should be assessed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think that's the beauty of the whole industry at the moment. Everyone has to work together. And I know as a smart contract builder myself, it's great because everyone's trying to pull together and share these resources. And I think to wrap up on the decentralized nature, that's the thing I'm most positive about, the openness and the transparency. There might be handbrakes in bits and bobs and a little bits that aren't decentralized, but if everyone's open about that, I think that only can lead to a better future, really, for everybody.
Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, no worries.
We've got our keynote speech about to start in a couple of minutes' time on the main stage, if you'd like to make your way over. Round of applause for everyone. I thought that was a really interesting talk. Thanks, guys.